In the heart of the United Kingdom, the past refuses to stay buried. Stone walls that once echoed with royal feasts now ring with cries of the condemned. Country lanes that look calm by daylight turn into corridors of fear when the sun goes down, and in the ruins of churches, castles and asylums, people still swear they hear the footsteps of those who died long ago. These are not campfire stories. They are chilling accounts from soldiers, guards, tourists, and locals who swear on their lives that they've seen something they cannot explain. A headless queen drifting through a chapel, a shadow moving across a cellar wall where no one stood, cold hands reaching out in the dark. Britain is filled with beauty, history, and pride, but it is also home to secrets soaked in blood. Tonight we walk through those secrets together. 10 places where the dead do not rest. 10 places where history bleeds into the present. 10 places that will make you question whether the stories are folklore or warnings. Haunted place number 1. The Tower of London, England. For nearly 1,000 years this fortress has stood as both a symbol of power and a place of unrelenting fear. Built in 178 by William the Conqueror, its stone walls have seen kings crowned, traitors tortured, and countless lives ended beneath the executioner's axe. What was meant to guard the crown became a prison of despair, where whispers of betrayal were answered with blood. The tower's darkest tales cling to its walls like shadows that never fade. Anne Boleyn, the doomed queen of Henry VIII, met her fate on Tower Green in 1536. Witnesses claimed she walked calmly to the scaffold, prayed, and then silence. They say her spirit still roams the chapel where she was laid to rest, her severed head cradled in her arms, a ghostly figure gliding through stone corridors with eyes that stare into eternity. But she is not alone. The mystery of the princes in the tower has haunted Britain for over 5 centuries. Edward V, just 12 years old, and his younger brother Richard vanished inside these very walls in 1483. Many believe their uncle Richard III ordered their deaths to secure the throne. Years later, skeletal remains were uncovered near a staircase, and ever since, visitors have reported the faint sound of children crying in the dead of night, as if the young princes still begged to be set free. The tower's hauntings are not limited to royalty. In 1816, a guard collapsed in shock after confronting what he swore was a massive spectral bear roaming the grounds. Others have reported disembodied footsteps, icy blasts of air that stop the breath in their throat, and the chilling sobs of women echoing down empty corridors. One yeoman warder patrolling in 1974 told of an invisible hand that pressed firmly on his shoulder. He spun around, no one stood behind him. The air grew so cold that his breath fogged before his eyes, and in the silence he heard quiet sobbing that seemed to come from nowhere and everywhere at once. And then, nothing. Visitors have their own stories. A tourist once wrote that as she climbed the tower's spiral staircase, her camera froze, refusing to work. Later, when the pictures finally developed, one image sent her trembling. A pale woman dressed in Tudor clothing standing just behind her. The Tower of London has witnessed betrayal, greed, ambition, and death, and with every passing century, the ghosts refuse to leave, bound to the stone by blood and memory. If its walls could talk, their screams would echo across history. But if the tower chills your bones, what waits beneath the streets of Scotland may steal the very breath from your lungs. Deep in the heart of Edinburgh lies a labyrinth where shadows scratch against the walls and something far darker waits in silence. Haunted place number 2, Edinburgh Vaults, Scotland. Beneath the cobbled streets of Edinburgh lies a secret world, a suffocating maze carved from cold stone, long forgotten by the living, but not by the dead. Built in the late 1700s beneath South Bridge, the Edinburgh Vaults were originally intended as storage and workspace for merchants. But after only a few short years, the damp, airless conditions made them uninhabitable for most. As the wealthier classes moved their trades above ground, the vaults were abandoned to the shadows. What followed was a descent into horror. The destitute, the criminals, the desperate. They moved in, and with them came stories of murder, prostitution, illegal gambling, and worse. Disease ran rampant. Children were said to disappear into the darkness, never to be seen again. And when the body snatchers began stealing corpses from graveyards to sell to medical schools, it's believed more than a few victims were alive when taken, their screams swallowed by the stone. Locals once whispered that witches and satanic cults held rituals in the vault's deeper chambers. When authorities finally sealed the area off in the 1800s, it was with quiet relief, because whatever had taken root down there was no longer human. In recent decades, the vaults were rediscovered. Brave investigators, historians, and thrill-seekers descended with cameras and voice recorders, expecting old walls and musty air. What they found instead was pure dread. Shadow figures are seen darting between arches, always just at the edge of sight. Cold spots strike without warning. Visitors speak of intense pressure on their chests, sudden nausea, and an overwhelming urge to flee. Some emerge with deep scratches across their backs, despite being completely alone. One tour guide described leading a group through the lower chambers when the temperature dropped sharply. The lights flickered, and then from the stone wall to her left came a low, guttural growl. Every person in that group heard it. One man vomited on the floor, another began crying uncontrollably. They never finished the tour. Paranormal investigators have reported malevolent entities in specific chambers, especially a pitch-black room known only as the Watcher's Room. Inside, devices fail, flashlights flicker and die, and more than one person has claimed that something touched their neck and whispered directly into their ear. One man, an experienced ghost hunter, was found outside the vaults after a solo session, shaking, barefoot, and covered in blood. He never spoke about what happened he never went back. The Edinburgh vaults aren't haunted by stories, they are haunted by presence. It presses against the walls, it lingers in the air, and it's waiting for the next person foolish enough to walk in alone. But spirits don't only stalk the underground. Some places breathe with their ghosts in plain sight. Houses where every floorboard remembers a scream, and every locked room hides a secret that was never meant to be uncovered. And in one such place, the whispers grow loud. Haunted place number 3, Borley Rectory, Essex, England. For decades, one building was whispered about as the most haunted house in all of England. Built in 1862 on quiet countryside land, Borley Rectory looked ordinary to the outside world, an imposing red brick home surrounded by fields and silence. But from the very beginning, its walls seemed alive with something that refused to rest. The rectory was said to have been built on the grounds of an old monastery, a place tied to a legend of forbidden love between a monk and a nun. The story goes that the lovers tried to flee together, but their attempt ended in blood. The monk was executed, and the nun was entombed alive within the walls of the convent. Whether fact or folklore, the tale set the stage for a haunting that would terrorize anyone who dared live there. Soon after the rectory was occupied, strange things began. Villagers reported seeing a spectral nun drifting across the grounds, her face hidden in shadow, her figure glowing pale against the night. A phantom coach, drawn by headless horses, was said to thunder silently down the lane, its driver clutching the reins with no face to show. Inside the house, residents complained of footsteps echoing down empty halls, doors slamming without cause, and bells ringing though no one had touched them. But the most terrifying were the messages that appeared on the walls. Words written in a thin, childlike scrawl seemed to materialize out of nowhere. Pleas for help, names scratched into plaster, messages begging for prayers. One in particular froze the blood of the family inside. "Marianne, please help me. Mary Ann was the name of the rector's wife. No one could explain how the writing appeared, yet it grew darker and longer with each passing day, as if someone or something was answering back. Residents reported objects flying across rooms with violent force, dishes smashed against walls, books hurled themselves from shelves, and one servant fled the house after claiming invisible hands tugged at her skirt until she fell screaming down the stairs. Investigators swarmed Borley in the 1930s, including famed paranormal researcher Harry Price. What he found convinced even skeptics that something unnatural lingered there. He documented cold spots, phantom footsteps, and direct responses to questions in the form of ghostly knocks. On more than one occasion, words appeared on the walls while he watched, as if an unseen hand was writing from beyond the grave. The rectory eventually burned in 1939, a fire that some said was inevitable, that the house itself wanted to consume what remained. Yet even in ruins, passers-by still reported figures gliding through the rubble, and the unmistakable sight of the nun crossing the lane where the monastery once stood. Borley Rectory was more than a house. It was a cage of tragedy, binding restless spirits that refused to leave. The land itself seemed cursed, as though the earth beneath carried every sorrow, every secret, and every scream that had ever been silenced there. But if Borley is England's most haunted house, it is not the only place where walls drink in the memory of suffering. Deep in the countryside, in an ancient inn older than most kingdoms, the air is thick with something darker, something born not just of restless spirits, but of sacrifice. Haunted place number 4, the ancient Ram Inn, Gloucestershire, England. Standing crooked and heavy with age, the ancient Ram Inn has been called one of the most terrifying places in Britain. Built in 1145, this inn sits on land that was once a pagan burial ground. From the start, its foundations were laid over soil soaked in rituals older than Christianity itself. And for nearly 9 centuries, stories of violence, witchcraft, and demonic presence have followed its every stone. The inn's history is a dark one. It was once used to house masons and workers, building the nearby St. Mary's Church, yet locals claimed the church's holy ground could not cleanse the land where the inn stood. Legends tell of child sacrifices and pagan rites performed to appease ancient gods. Later in the Middle Ages, the inn became entangled with witch trials. Women accused of practicing the dark arts were said to have met their deaths here. Some believe their souls never left, bound in torment to the place where they drew their final breath. But it is not just history that makes the ancient Ram Inn infamous. It is the violence of its haunting. Unlike the drifting figures of castles and cathedrals, what moves here strikes with fury. Visitors have been pinned to walls by unseen hands, dragged from their beds, and left with scratches deep enough to bleed. Entire groups of ghost hunters have abandoned investigations mid-session, swearing they felt a presence that wanted them gone, or worse. Inside the bishop's room, one of the inn's most feared chambers, strange figures have been reported for centuries. A dark shadow looms in the corner, sometimes forming into the shape of a man. Guests have claimed to hear growling, as though something feral prowled just out of sight. In another room called the Witch's Room, objects are said to move violently. Some visitors describe a pressure on their chests, so heavy, it feels like they are being suffocated by an unseen force. One investigator told of lying in bed when the air turned ice cold. Suddenly, invisible hands grabbed his ankles and yanked him down the mattress. He fought to hold on, but the grip was relentless. When lights were turned on, he was left with red marks around his legs, as if something had tried to drag him into the darkness. Even seasoned paranormal researchers tread lightly here. They speak of a heaviness that clings the moment you enter, a feeling that you are being watched by something not of this world, and many leave with warnings. This place does not just hold spirits, it holds something far more dangerous. The ancient Ram Inn is not merely haunted. It is feared as a place cursed at its very foundation, a place where the veil between the living and the dead has been torn open, allowing something unnatural to roam free. Those who dare to enter are met not with whispers or cold spots, but with force, with anger, and with an intent to harm. If the Ram Inn is cursed by the devil himself, then London hides a theatre where laughter once died and spirits took centre stage. Haunted place number 5. Theatre Royal, Drury Lane, London. Beneath the dazzling lights and velvet curtains of London's oldest theatre lies a history soaked in tragedy. First built in the 1600s, the Theatre Royal, Drury Lane has survived fires, war, and centuries of performances. It is a place where kings once sat in gilded balconies and the greatest actors of their age commanded the stage. But behind the glamour and applause lies a darker story of sudden deaths, of accidents that silenced laughter, and of spirits that never left the spotlight. Actors and stagehands have whispered for generations about the spectres of Drury Lane. The most infamous is known simply as the Man in Grey. Described as a tall, distinguished figure dressed in a powdered wig, cloak, and tricorn hat, he is said to appear during rehearsals, silently gliding through the theatre's upper circle. Some believe he is the ghost of a murdered man. His skeleton, stabbed in the chest, was discovered hidden within a bricked-up passage, centuries after his appearances were first reported. His presence, strange as it may sound, is considered by performers a sign of good luck for the play about to begin. But luck has not always been on this stage's side. Backstage tragedies have taken many lives. Actors have collapsed mid-performance, never to rise again. Stage machinery, heavy ropes, and collapsing sets have claimed the lives of crew members in sudden, brutal accidents. Their voices, some say, can still be heard shouting cues in the dark wings, long after the theatre has closed for the night. Visitors and staff have reported strange sounds echoing through the auditorium when no one else is present. Phantom applause that bursts suddenly from the empty seats, as though unseen audiences still cheer for a show that ended centuries ago. Others tell of footsteps pacing the stage, steady and deliberate, though no actor stands upon it. One performer swore that during a late-night rehearsal, he felt eyes on him from the stalls. When he looked up, he saw a pale man in grey seated alone, watching intently. The moment he blinked, the figure was gone. And Drury Lane holds more than just one ghost. A crushed comedian is said to haunt the cellar, his body broken by a stage accident. Others speak of a young woman in white, who appears only in mirrors, her reflection staring back when no one else is in the room. Actors who have seen her describe a chill that makes their lines falter, their voices catch as though the stage itself is testing their courage. For all its grandeur, the Theatre Royal is more than a monument to performance. It is a stage for the dead, a place where the curtain never truly falls. Even as new shows breathe life into its walls, the echoes of past tragedies linger, demanding to be remembered. But away from the stage, beyond the glow of London's theatres, lie ruins far older. Ruins where stone walls are thick with secrets, and whispers of war and betrayal refuse to fade with time. There, in the depths of a Scottish stronghold, shadows wait for those who dare step inside. Haunted place number 6. Glamis Castle, Scotland. In the rolling hills of Angus, Scotland, stands a fortress as beautiful as it is feared. Glamis Castle is a royal residence, steeped in centuries of power and prestige. It is the childhood home of the Queen Mother and the birthplace of Princess Margaret. To the outside world it is a fairy tale castle, but within its stone walls lurk legends so disturbing that even the royal family has kept them cloaked in silence. Stories whisper of a child born into the family centuries ago, so horribly deformed that he was hidden away for life. Some say he lived locked in a secret chamber, never seen by the outside world, a prisoner of his own bloodline. He became known as the Monster of Glamis. Others claim he grew into adulthood, walking the hidden passages at night, his cries echoing through the castle until the day he died. Even now, there are rooms in the castle that no guest has ever entered, sealed for generations, their secrets kept from curious eyes. But that is not the only darkness tied to these walls. Tales of betrayal and murder stain Glamis. One of the most infamous stories speaks of Earl Beardy, a cruel and arrogant nobleman said to have played cards on the Sabbath. When warned to stop, he cursed the heavens and swore he would play until Judgment Day. That very night, a mysterious visitor cloaked in black appeared at the castle. Beardy welcomed him to the table. Hours later, screams were heard from behind the locked chamber. When the door was finally opened, Beardy was gone. The legend claims he had played cards with the devil himself and lost his soul. To this day, the sound of shuffling cards and maniacal laughter can be heard coming from the chamber, though the room stands empty. Other spirits wander the castle grounds. The most frequently seen is the Grey Lady, believed to be Lady Janet Douglas, accused of witchcraft and burned at the stake in fear. Her ghost is said to drift silently through the chapel, her presence chilling the air to an icy stillness. Visitors who have entered the chapel at dusk have spoken of a figure kneeling at the altar, shrouded in grey, only to vanish when approached. Guests report more subtle terrors as well. Shadows slipping across doorways where no one stands, whispers carried down corridors, the feeling of being watched by unseen eyes. Some have awoken in the night to hear footsteps pacing outside their chamber doors, stopping only when they gather the courage to look out, finding nothing but emptiness. The beauty of Glamis Castle hides a curse, one rooted in secrets the family will never confirm, but which the walls themselves cannot forget. Every legend, every ghost, every forbidden room is a reminder that even royal blood cannot escape the grip of the past. And yet, the castle's secrets are not the darkest Britain has to offer. For in a small crooked house in Gloucestershire, the veil is said to rip open completely. There the hauntings are not whispers or fleeting shadows. They are violent, brutal and merciless. Haunted place number 7. Pendle Hill, Lancashire, England. Rising stark against the Lancashire countryside, Pendle Hill is more than a landscape. It is a wound carved into English history. For in 1612, this place became the backdrop of one of the most infamous witch trials in the world. 12 villagers, mostly women, were accused of practicing witchcraft. Some confessed under duress, others swore innocence until their last breath. Yet 10 of them were found guilty and hanged on the gallows. Their bodies were left to rot, their names forever tied to curses and fear. The memory of those trials has never left Pendle Hill. Locals say the spirits of the condemned linger, their agony bound to the soil where they were betrayed. Hikers climbing its slopes often report a heaviness in the air, as though the hill itself remembered. Some describe hearing faint, eerie chanting carried by the wind, ritual-like voices rising and falling, impossible to trace to any living soul. At dusk, when the light dies over the moors, witnesses have sworn they saw dark hooded figures moving silently along the ridge, vanishing into thin air when approached. Paranormal investigators flock to Pendle Hill, and the recordings they leave with are chilling. On EVP devices, voices have been captured whispering pleas like "Don't hurt us" and "Let us go." Many believe these are the trapped echoes of the women executed in 1612, their souls condemned to replay their torment for eternity. Others claim darker forces have taken root here, energies that were summoned in anger and despair, feeding on the hill's cursed reputation. One investigator described climbing alone at night when the temperature suddenly dropped. His equipment began to malfunction, his flashlight flickering out. From the darkness ahead, he heard the sound of footsteps, slow, deliberate, crunching against the earth. When he called out, the steps stopped. Then, faintly, a woman's voice whispered from the shadows, "We're still here." He fled before reaching the summit. Pendle Hill is not just haunted by ghosts. It is haunted by injustice, The cries of the innocent mingle with the superstition that condemned them, and their echoes turn the quiet moors into a graveyard of memory. To walk there is to step directly into the past, where the line between the living and the dead blurs with every breath of cold wind. Haunted place number 8. Hampton Court Palace, London, England. Few places in Britain carry the weight of Tudor history like Hampton Court Palace. Built in the early 1500s, and once the glittering residence of King Henry VIII, its halls echo with centuries of power, betrayal and death. Behind the grandeur of its stained glass, towering gates and endless courtyards lies a history soaked in blood, most of it spilled by the king himself. It is here that Catherine Howard, Henry's fifth wife, met her horrific end. Accused of adultery, she was dragged away to await execution at the Tower of London. But before her death, she is said to have made one desperate attempt to beg for mercy. Witnesses claim her spirit still relives those final moments. Guards, staff and visitors alike tell of seeing her ghost sprinting down the palace's haunted gallery, her face contorted in terror, her screams echoing off the stone walls as she tries to reach the king's chamber. She never makes it. Each time she vanishes before the doors. Her cries of mercy, mercy, leave even the bravest witnesses shaken. But Catherine is not the only one bound to this palace. Over the years, countless reports have surfaced of ghostly figures drifting through the courtyards, royal women in Tudor gowns, shadows passing across windows when no one is inside, and whispers in the council chambers where fates were decided. Some visitors describe sudden drops in temperature so sharp their breath clouds the air, as if they've stepped straight into the 16th century. Perhaps the most unsettling piece of evidence came in security cameras set to monitor the palace recorded something no guard could explain. On the footage, a tall figure clad in Tudor-style robes appeared suddenly in the archway of a sealed corridor. It pulled open a set of heavy double doors bolted from the inside, before slamming them shut with violent force. When guards rushed to the scene, the corridor was completely empty. The doors remained locked. No intruder was ever found. To this day, the footage is studied as one of the most famous pieces of paranormal evidence ever captured on CCTV. Many who visit Hampton Court Palace describe leaving with an unshakable feeling that the spirits here are not merely shadows, but restless souls reenacting their agony for eternity. In a palace where queens lived in fear of their husband's wrath, it seems only fitting that their cries still echo through its haunted galleries. Haunted place number 9, Pluckley Village, Kent, England. Tucked away in the quiet countryside of Kent lies a place that carries a title no village should ever want. The most haunted village in England. Pluckley, charming by daylight with its cottages and hedgerows, transforms after dark into something far more unsettling. With at least a dozen documented spirits said to haunt its narrow lanes and old buildings, every corner of this village seems to carry a ghostly shadow. The most terrifying of these legends is that of the Screaming Man. Local lore tells of a brickworker who met a gruesome death in an accident, crushed beneath the weight of collapsing clay walls. His cries of pain were said to echo for hours before he finally fell silent. To this day, his screams are still heard piercing the night air, an unearthly, drawn-out wail that drifts across the village and freezes anyone who hears it in place. But he is far from alone. Witnesses have seen a phantom horse-drawn coach thundering down Pluckley's winding lane. The sound of hooves and wheels rattle the silence. Yet when villagers look, they see only shadows, an outline of a carriage lit by lantern light before it vanishes into the darkness. Generations have passed down this tale, claiming the coach belongs to souls bound forever to this cursed stretch of road. Other spirits linger here as well. The ghost of the watercress woman is said to appear by a bridge, smoking her pipe as though still waiting for customers. In the churchyard, a phantom monk has been spotted gliding between gravestones, and in the old schoolhouse, children's laughter rings out long after the building closed its doors. One chilling report came from a driver cutting through the village late at night. As he passed the crossroads, a dark figure suddenly appeared in the road, ragged, hunched, and screaming. The driver slammed his brakes, but before impact, the figure simply dissolved into the mist. Shaken and pale, he swore he would never drive through Pluckley again after nightfall. To walk through Pluckley after dusk is to feel surrounded not just by the dead, but by a community of them. Each street, each cottage, each tree seems tied to another ghost story, as though the entire village itself is alive with restless spirit. But if Pluckley is a village ruled by its dead, then on the jagged coast of Northumberland lies a ruin, where kings, invaders, and soldiers of centuries past still rise from the shadows. A castle where the sea crashes below, and the ghosts of war refuse to surrender. Haunted Place Number 10, Chillingham Castle, Northumberland, England. Perched on the rugged Northumberland landscape, Chillingham Castle has stood for over 800 years, a fortress soaked in blood and remembered for its cruelty. Once a strategic stronghold during the wars with Scotland, it became infamous not for the battles fought outside its walls, but for the horrors carried out within. Its medieval dungeons and torture chambers earned it a reputation as one of the most brutal castles in Britain, where prisoners suffered unspeakable torment before death finally claimed them. The stone walls here don't just hold history, they hold screams. Among the countless spirits said to haunt Chillingham, one is whispered about more than any other: the Blue Boy. For centuries, guests reported being awakened by the cries of a child echoing through the pitch-black corridors, piercing wails of terror that would rise and fall until silence returned. Often witnesses claimed the darkness would suddenly glow with a faint blue light, and within it, the figure of a young boy would appear dressed in spectral blue, reaching out as if begging for help, before vanishing into the walls themselves. For years, many dismissed the Blue Boy as legend, but during renovations in the 20th century, builders made a discovery that chilled even hardened skeptics. Hidden deep within a wall, the skeletons of a child and a man were found bricked away together, their bones sealed in darkness for centuries. The tale of the Blue Boy was no longer just a ghost story. It was tied to a real and terrible truth. And he is not alone. The castle is said to host a gallery of restless spirits. A ghostly lady in white has been seen drifting silently along the corridor. Groans and murmurs echo from the dungeon, where prisoners once scratched their last marks into the stone. Visitors report cold blasts of air, phantom footsteps that follow them down empty halls, and the sensation of hands brushing against their shoulders when no one is there. Some even claim to have heard faint prayers whispered from the chapel long after midnight. Guests who spend the night describe waking in terror to find their rooms filled with a bluish glow, their bodies frozen with dread as the faint sound of sobbing echoes from the wall. Others tell of doors slamming shut violently, unseen figures tugging at their blankets, and the overwhelming sense that they are being watched by eyes that never blink. Chillingham Castle is more than haunted. It is a monument to pain, a place where history's cruelties left scars, so deep they tore open the veil between life and death. Every corridor feels charged, every chamber heavy with what has been suffered there, and when night falls, the past rises again. From the Tower of London's execution grounds to the wails of Chillingham Castle's Blue Boy, Britain's haunted places are more than ghost stories. They are chapters of history, written in blood, betrayal, and restless soul. And though their walls still stand, their shadows remind us that some stories never die. Thank you for joining me on this journey through Britain's most haunted places. Every story we've uncovered tonight is part of a much larger truth, that the past is never as far away as we think. Which of these hauntings stayed with you the most? Was it the cries of the Blue Boy, the nun at Borley Rectory, or Catherine Howard's desperate sprint through the haunted gallery? Share your thoughts in the comments below. I want to know which spirit you'd never want to meet in the dark. Remember to like this video, subscribe to our channel,
and turn on notifications so you don't miss our next deep dive into the darkness. Until next time, stay curious, stay brave, and never walk alone in the dark.